Hey Lindsay, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
I'm driving to the office. I hit a few accidents, so I'll be on camera as soon as I get in the office.
Okay, be safe. Thanks, Melissa.
Okay.
How's everyone's week going? Are we like above
Good.
average or below average?
Yeah. I see
Average.
Justin, Dusty, Casey, Steve, and Matt is logging in.
Yep, we've got a few other people slowly making their way.
We'll give everybody maybe another minute here. Everyone to get logged in.
All right, I don't have anyone else in the waiting room, so I'll go ahead and share my screen. And then Tyrone and Dave, if you want to introduce yourselves and share your experience
Sure,
with the process
sure,
improvement. Perfect.
sure. Okay. Dave, I'll kick it off if you don't mind. First, I want to say good morning to all. Uh, First, let me do a sound check. Is my volume okay for everyone? Am I too loud or too low? Can someone just
Good.
reply?
You're good, Tyrone.
I'm good. All right, thanks. I appreciate it. I want to make sure that I'm not blowing out everybody. How about Dave? Dave, can you do a sound check on your side?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All righty. Okay, well, we got that behind us. Okay, so I want to start out by saying welcome to today's process improvement training session in support of our construction and facility leaders leadership program. I'm excited about today's session because I am a witness and an advocate user that the mindset of process excellence is such a meaningful approach building operational success. And to see the participants that who are attending today, which some of you are defined as stakeholders for various business units, tells me that the construction and facility service leadership has an interest in maximizing processes and eliminating waste, reducing costs in the way we do business. Some of you may not know me, so I want to just take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Tyrone Leak, and I'm co-partner today with David Belagana, which I'll give him an opportunity here in just a second. Prior to joining Novant, I worked in the automotive and transportation industries for international companies where process excellence was a huge focus on delivering operational success. During this time, I received my certification in Six Sigma, the Green Belt level, which focused including standardizing inventory management processes through 12 countries. These initiatives reduced the annual spend of about $135 million. Let's see. During 2014, I joined Novant Matthews Medical Center, where I was the manager of materials management. Here, using these same processes and concepts, we re-engineered our surgical supplies par rooms, which helped the OR surgical team to reduce the amount of time they were spending processing and preparing for cases for the next day, which they was very excited about that opportunity that we pulled off. Then in 2017, 2018, using these same concepts, we decided to re-engineer our emergency department, labor and delivery services, radiology, and our med-surg par rooms, where we actually remove all the excessive inventory and it allowed us to free up space to stock actual items that they were using to support their 24/7 operations. In 2019, I joined the plant engineering group, and some of you are familiar of the project that we took on in this area. where for Novant Legacy, we looked at all the parts and supply crib areas and we re-engineered those areas. Now, what was interesting about that was that we realized that we did not have the labor workforce to take on the managing of the data inventory. So we decided to call on a lot of our vendors, our primary vendors that we would be buying the majority of commodity groups parts from. And we established a program called Vendor Managed Inventory, where they come in and they do assessment. And from there, they are also responsible for restocking. And that has been quite a success for us as well. So that kind of brings me to where we are today. There's another initiative that we have going on in the plant engineering group where we're looking at our air filters that we are using for each of our air handlers across system-wide. And we're establishing a vendor managed inventory as well. And we're going to be using another vendor for that concept. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit background where I come from and how I have been using process excellence processes in the past, which every situation that I have been involved in has been a success. So I hope that as we go through today, you will likewise engage what we are going to be presenting to you, and feel free to ask questions and things as we go through, because it's such an important project or initiative that we'll be talking about today. So at this point, David, could you kind of introduce yourself, those who may not know you, and we'll kick it off from there.
Sure. Hey, thanks, Tyrone. So David Bellegani, Director of Facilities for the Coastal Market. And so as many of you kind of already know, processes improvement is a really big part of what we do, especially when it becomes like in part of our environment of care. We got our set of management plans. They're very scrutinized by Joint Commission, DNV, and process improvement is all about how we manage those in our annual reviews and indicators and a lot of things that we kind of already do in our normal life. So a couple of things that I've done here. So lean is pretty big, the lean process, and we've gone through some of that. So kind of one of the items that when I first came here to New Hanover, when we were here, it was one of the items that was a big on the plate. Let's take a look at was recalls. So recalls was kind of scattered, no repository. You know what? Where do you get the information? You got to call somebody, they go to a file. So process improvement is a really, really good streamline of gathering information, putting it in a place where it needs to be, and it needs to be very not determined by one person. So when I say that, it's like when we create a process and how we do things, this needs to be a process that doesn't rely on a single person in order to produce results, track data, or be able to verify what's been done. So, that process improvement went very well using the lean process. So, these will be kind of, I hope this is in the back of your mind as we go through this today and think about how you would use this in the environment of care, because many of you are going to probably be the lead on the environment of care council for your hospital. And so using this process, and you have other people that'll be involved in it, but will be very much a part of what you do. With that, I'll just say we can kick it off.
All righty. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. This next slide, I think we all are very familiar with it. So, it started out with the word we. So what I like for us to do is just read together that statement. So if you will join me by just saying, we create a healthier future and bring remarkable experiences to life. That is such a huge statement that has a lot of meaning to it. And when we dive further into it, we see what it's talking about. It's talking about delivery. It's talking about empower. It's talking about striving. It's talking about one word, together. And Dave kind of centered on that in his introduction when he was talking about it takes more than one person. When we talk about process excellence, it's about groups. So as we go through today, we want to make sure that we are using the word we. It's not about I from that viewpoint. If we're going to be successful, it's going to take all of us. Next. Before we get started, we do have a few housekeeping guidelines that we need to just kind of put out front just to make sure we all on the same page. So reviewing it, we're saying, please keep your cameras, keep camera on during virtual sessions for active engagement. Active engagement. We want everyone to participate today. And I want to be the first to say there's no such thing as a dumb question. I mean, if it's on your mind, it's something that you really want to ask. So please feel free to do that. Actively participate in group activities and utilize the chat for interaction. Mute yourself during emergency calls and times you need to step away from the class. We know that's going to happen. So, I mean, in our nature of business operation, we're the ones that keep the hospitals and things going. So it's very important that we understand it. And we're also being courteous to those who are in this training today that we're not interrupting the class. Raise your virtual hand when you want to contribute to the conversation. Engage in discussions respectfully without interrupting or dominating conversations. Encourage diversity through healthy debate. That is so important. We want to hear your take on things, how things are, what your beliefs are. And we will periodically take a break and we will have a lunch session. Before we go further, is there any additional guidelines that we should note at this time from the team? Okay, Dave.
Okay, so course learning objectives. So just real quick, we'll go over a couple of things that look for you to get out of this class and to kind of just be thinking about as we go through. So basically explain fundamental process improvement concepts to enhance patient satisfaction and operational efficiency. So when we go through this, a few of the things that tie back to what we do and are very important. I mean, we are measured by patient satisfaction and how we operate in our own world of facilities. How do we use this process improvement in order to improve that? This is going to be key to a lot of our leadership activities going forward and how we do that. So another thing is with that, we're going to go over some tools and techniques of how to, reduce the variation in a process. So meaning removing waste, or how do you make a process or go about, engaging a team in order to do that. And so the other portion of this is, as you adapt for continuous improvement concepts. So taking this and rolling it out to your project. How do you culture a process improvement? How do you make it take? How do you verify it and bring it to the table? So just objectives.
All righty. Thank you, Dave. Okay, let's have a little group discussion. What is your experience with process improvements? Have you ever been involved with a process excellence initiative? So let's hear from you. Have you ever been involved in any type of process improvement initiative? If you want to unmute your phones. Any feedback?
We could try popcorn style if you want to do that. So if the first person wants to speak and then call on the next person to speak, that might be a fun way to get everyone engaged. We just want to hear from everyone so we can get a baseline of where you're at. I personally have gone through, I'm CHOP certified. So for those of you who are familiar with DNV, they use the ISO 9000 process improvement standard. So I am CHOP certified. I'm also Lean Sigma certified. I am black belt in healthcare. And I was able to achieve that certification this year. So this is a topic that I'm very much familiar with, even though we've got our two subject matter experts here today. It was fun putting together this slide deck. for you, and also the group activities, which you'll be pleased to know will be your homework assignment. So as you are completing your homework assignments today, all you have to do, hopefully at the end, is just submit those to the LMS. So I don't see a virtual hand raised yet. That was my exposure to process improve. Oh, there we go. Thanks, Steve.
I'll take one for the team.
All right.
Well, now I blanked on it. Jeez. I know with plant engineering, we obviously do a lot of work that doesn't always get recorded. So, I know a year or two ago we started implementing the self-identified work orders to make sure our guys were getting more credit than they were getting. And I know, the more and more we move into the future, the more and more stuff is based on data. So I know will help us in the long run.
Absolutely. Next. Oh, come on, guys. We're one family now.
I was supposed to call somebody. I think Seth has a good answer. So.
Yeah, I mean, we do a monthly process service here at the hospital, and each leader is takes turns telling their improvement or whatever, and I think it's been very interesting to learn what the other leaders in the hospital do, from the pharmacy and the lab working together, and just throughout the whole hospital. It's very good to see the departments working together and improving their patient experience and their workflow.
Okay. All right.
Go ahead, take it away, Casey.
All right.
I had a feeling. So I'm gonna go back when I worked at Eaton Corporation running CNC machines. I was involved with process improvement of the flow, what they call cells. You had multiple machines you had to run loading parts. Just basically processing the flow of the way the parts were being ran.
Okay. All right.
Brian.
Appreciate it, Casey. Yeah, I'm continually reviewing the way I do things and how I organize my work orders and whatnot. And when I go to different tasks, better way to streamline my priorities and stuff like that. So I'm constantly looking at that, figuring out how I can do it quicker, more efficiently, better.
Okay. All right. Brian, who you want to call on?
I think I saw somebody's hand up.
Okay.
Whose hand was that up? Sean Mason.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so in the role I'm in now, I'm trying to implement new things because the prior person that was here kind of left a mess. And no,
They'll never use me for a reference again.
yeah, so like I was talking with Ben yesterday with the like the shutoff valves for all our water locations here at the facility. We have a binder for it now, but it's just we had an issue a couple weeks ago where somebody knocked the sprinkler head off, and if you were to look at that binder in an emergency, your brain's not going to function like the way it's set up. It's not very organized. So I said my goal is to get it all in like a H drive to where people have access to it, and like if a sprinkler head goes off in the ED, you can go straight to this app and just say, okay, first floor ED E-wing. It'll tell you exactly where the valve is, and I think that'll just save a lot of money because you can get the water shut off quicker, and it's an easier process flow. So that's one thing I'm working on.
Yeah,
it's taking time, but that's my goal, and that was the goal we discovered yesterday. So
yeah, I love that. I can relate to that. I've had the fire department standing there with me in fire control. And I'm looking through a print trying to figure out, okay, let me see, 1N, 2L, 3. That is, and I'm like, oh my God.
Well, yeah. And whenever, like I told Ben, whenever you're in an emergency like that, your brain doesn't function in small details. So you just need as plain as day. Like that's where it's at. So you can function. But so
I think that really points out too what Sean's talking about is how valuable our older team members are that are starting to age out and the wealth of knowledge they have.
Right.
Because that is something that's invaluable that was created by, Sid Alfred years ago. And definitely props to Sean for updating that because I just kind of used it as is. But it saved me several times when I was in that position. And I'm sure it's helping Sean and those guys too.
Great. Okay, Sean, where you want to go from here? I think we got a couple more.
Okay, we'll go with Dusty. Hi, Dusty.
All righty. Dusty?
Yeah, we have struggled since I've been here with the Hillrom nurse call system breaking down and troubleshooting and having to deal with them. And we're finally getting the Rollins nurse call system implemented and put in slowly but surely. But that's been a big help for us time-wise. And so I'm hoping that's going to be a process for improvement for the whole facility.
Okay, all right. Dusty, where you want to go next?
I'll shoot Matthew.
Okay,
So some of the stuff like Steve mentioned with plant engineering is stuff, I would have done, I used to do when I was at Mint Hill, coming over to the property management side to help with processes over here because Sean mentioned some of the guys that are aging out and the guys that retired when I backfilled his position, everything was in, he had everything in his head, he knew where everything was, who did what. And when I took over I was not past that information. So to help, improve that a little bit, we helped with, started using shared services a lot more in these clinics because we could track that a little better, along with it's a huge cost savings.
okay.
Instead of hiring contractors to do, every little thing that these clinics, or reach out to ask for.
Yes. Great, great. Matt, where you want to go? The next.
Justin.
Okay, Justin?
Sure. So in my past role, we had several, I was involved in several process improvement initiatives. One of the latter ones was the initiative for the call center for shared services. That process to where we made it easier for the managers at the facility to reach out to shared services, created that process, and, developed that whole thing. So I think most of you guys are familiar with that, so won't go into detail, but yeah.
Okay. All right, Justin, where you want to go next?
How about Melissa? Melissa, can you answer from your phone?
Yeah, I'm good. I just get set up at the office. So I don't know if I'd consider them improvements, but I've been a part of a few process changes.
Okay.
One being, our corporate consolidation and space efficiencies and reducing that footprint system-wide. One that we're still trying to get rolled out is that furniture maintenance program in the hospitals and the RFID tagging. I know we've got it at Clemens, and we're I think we did some at Kernersville, and we're working at Presby. And that's really going to be helping with tracking furniture and maintenance programs. And we created a maintenance portal, so it takes it off plant engineering. But that takes time to get user groups to get used to using that instead of putting the plant engineering tickets in.
Okay, all right. Melissa, who you want to select next?
Is anybody left?
I think Gary and Matt, I think they're available.
All right, let's go, Gary.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
One of the things that we worked on here at Forsyth is, like some of the other guys have mentioned, is helping the guys in the shops with identification, location of air handlers and the areas they serve, and sort of a process to go through when they may have an issue, especially on nights and weekends. Fairly large facility, so there's quite a bit of equipment. So giving them at least a head start on maybe trying to know where to go to.
Okay. All right. So I guess that leads us to Matt.
Yes, sir. So kind of like Melissa said, I don't know if it's a process improvement, but definitely a process change with our accounts payable and Infor and all that. It was a different process, just getting the invoice ready to be sent in to be paid. So I think I finally got a good process down of downloading it and then putting it in Bluebeam and then, printing the cost string on there, accounting string, and then actually sending it in. And then once it's paid, I move it to a different folder. So I got a little process worked out that I think's
starting to
Okay.
work
All
out a
right.
little bit.
Yeah, that's great. And in closing here, you know, we all in some way are touching the info implementation, which process excellence for us to be successful, it's going to take all of us to continue to move forward and support and embrace and make the adjustments where necessary from the viewpoint. So in definition, that's what process excellence is all about. But each of your topics that you shared with us, each one of them are in some way related to process improvements, process excellence. And thank you for sharing with us. David?
So on the this next few slides, we're going to start off with learning objectives.
And so Steve had his hand raised. Steve, was there something
Sorry,
that
Steve.
to add?
That's all right. I don't want to hold this up too much. I'm hoping we'll get to this during today's sessions, but I guess my question is, when does process improvement become not an improvement? And I just know at Novant being so change ready, it's like we're constantly trying to implement changes to improve. And when does it start to become detrimental and not a help? And
Good question.
How do you address that? So
Yes, good. And we are going to talk to that, Steve, later in our discussions today, but that's a good point that we want to bring up. Okay.
And Toyota actually almost went bankrupt. They almost actually, Toyota gets recognized quite a bit for their lean practices and establishing the Six Sigma. And they realize there is a point when you can over process, when the process
Yes.
is in the way of performance and production. And so, and actually, to be quite honest with you, we're going through that with my own team, where quality is so important, but to what extent does quality become detrimental to the process, where we can't even get anything done because we've got to quality control check everything and get approvals. So there's definitely a balance there. And so as leaders, you have to be able to recognize, when we're overproducing, when are we like over quality control checking, and then make those adjustments. And we're going to talk about something later on,
Yeah.
critical to quality, or CTQs. And that would be a really good lens to answer those questions, in addition to the different waste streams. We talked about that in project management. Muda is a Japanese term for waste. And so that would be the lens that you would filter those questions through, is this causing more waste, and what is critical to quality?
Yeah. Thanks, Lindsay.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. I think that's a great point, because
Absolutely.
we get caught up in that. There is no doubt. So just in the next few slides, we're going to go over process improvement and the lean concepts. So process is what we're going to focus on. What does process mean? And I'm sorry. So a process is a collection of tasks, steps, and activities. So there's a lot to a process when we get ready to actually break it down. So there's these points right here. So steps taken are not just as in, A, B, C, and D. Steps taken can be actually footsteps. It can be waste. There's a lot of things, footsteps, that can actually cause a lot of waste. How do you process your time? That leads into there. So looking at those interdependencies with other processes. So what else is going on in this activity that you're doing that affects the efficiency of how you do it? So that's all part of a process. And then required resources. Do you have the tools that you need? Is there something that could be done better, more efficiently? Or how are you looking at this, and what lens are you looking through? So let's go walk through kind of some processes and identify that.
Okay, thank you. So when we look at process, there's two key components when we start to define our process. We have to understand there's going to be input, and then we have to understand, hopefully, there's going to be output. And to look at those scenarios, we're looking at the event that's triggering the process, the tasks that we need to take on to look at it, and then our decision, which is the output side of it. So as we go through here today, that's kind of setting the mind frame of it. There must be input, and then we hope there's going to be output results from what we're going through. Next.
So, and as we look through this, so each process needs to have an owner, right? So the owner is kind of the one that's responsible for this task. And so not only can it be who's responsible for it, but, you know, and something that we try to always do is drill down and make sure that we have the folks that actually do the job as part of this process improvement. They're a very big owner in this, and that's how you get their buy-in. As far as when you create a process, you need to have all the members, all the stakeholders that are part of this. And then a process owner may be any one of the following: a team member in charge, one specific task, so not a whole process or part of a process, a supervisor, or an executive level member. You know, multiple people in a process, but you should have the owner and who is responsible for doing the task.
So let's talk a little further about what is the process owner role. You know, that the process owner role will vary. It depends on the process and the organization needs from that viewpoint. But for most process owners, they will be doing the following. They will use matrix to measure the process performance, which is very important to make sure that we are contributing to improving the process of our expectations. Identify how the process meets the organization business goals. Too many times when we start to establish projects, we have a tendency to make the project too large and have a tendency. So it's so important that we define what that scope is and make sure it is aligned to what our business objectives and goals are. Document the process as a standard operating procedure, which is our SOPs. That's important that we establish what those guidelines are going to be, and then provide the necessary resources to operators within the process. Too many times when we establish processes, we really don't look at what is the true need of resources and labor to ensure that we're meeting our objective. Now, in most processes office, we try to reduce the amount of resources, reduce our costs and everything. That's one of the initiatives that plays a role in it. But we have to make sure that we have the right resources in the right place to make sure that we're being successful implementing our processes.
All right, now let's just talk about quality for a minute. So just a brief introduction on this. So, and it's funny, this is the International Organization of Standardization, ISO, defines quality as a degree which a set of inherent characteristics fulfills requirements. So kind of what this is, and so what it means to me and how I think about it is quality is measured, and so there's standards out there, and so there is baselines, and then there is this ties back to all kinds of things. It ties back to reimbursement. It ties back to you know, our finances and how we're viewed and rated. Quality has a really big impact, and it's across the board. So we'll go through and talk about quality a little bit, but quality really touches everything.
When we look at quality within the process, it encompasses various aspects such as accuracy, efficiency, reliability, and timeliness. All of this comes into play when we are developing. And to measure the process performances using matrix and key performance indicators, which allow our process owners to identify areas for improvement. So based on the components that we're looking at here, we want to make sure that we are truly looking at to make sure that the accuracy, the efficiency, reliability, and timeliness all is coming into play to ensure that we're being successful as we move forward.
All right, so one of those measurements, and Lindsay kind of made reference to this a little earlier, the critical to quality. So just to read this out, parameter performance provides information about whether the customer's patients, occupants, employees, AHJs will be satisfied. So critical to quality is what are we trying to do? What is the target? What is the goal? And so just a couple of examples here, you know, that we use on a daily basis. Take response time for repairs. This is measured in our database with the Brightly. And so time taken to respond to a maintenance request, you know, a target time is under 30 minutes for an urgent repair. So there's a measurement that gets measured as we do our work and when we close our work orders out. And this is an active measurement that we do now. Preventative maintenance compliance, we measure that consistently as well. So these are things that we do now. You know, percentage of preventive maintenance tasks completed on schedule. Looking at how we measure that. So, you know, even high in general priorities are required to be 100%. And so that's what we try to achieve. You know, emergency power available. You know, so we do our testing and we're constantly testing these things. And so, you know, it says with 0 failures during tests, you know, so that's a good point, but you know, we test these things so that we don't have a failure in another time. So if there is going to be a failure when we're doing the testing is the time we want that to happen. And then patient comfort and safety. So this is where we're measured with when it comes to patient satisfaction. The things that tie us to patient satisfaction is a room quiet at night and the room is clean. So a couple of those things and how we tie into that, we can work very closely with environmental services, with food and nutrition and some, you know, other operations folks and how we can have a big impact on that. So those are just some good examples of what is our eye on when it comes critical to quality.
Okay. Why identify critical of quality? Well, these 4 components here kind of embraces why we do this. We want to narrow the scope of the work on process improvement in the project. We want to identify the areas of improvement. We want to identify the 80% of factor that drives customer satisfaction. Obviously, in many cases, we can't take on the entire initiative, but if we focus on at least 80% of the factor that's impacting, that would drive success. And then maximize improvement possibilities with the available resources that we have. Next.
All right, so this will be a group discussion. So let's just take a second. And so this is how do we ensure tasks you perform daily meet Novant Health quality standards? And so basically what this is what specific processes, I'm sorry, excuse me. What specific processes or checks do you have in place to verify what work you do is up to a standard? So, I mean, that's something we do every day, I think. And we've kind of used some examples of that just in our introductions when we talked about our exposure. So if somebody can maybe share some examples of how they're doing that on a daily basis, you know, very interested in maybe how are we doing it so it affects our patients or our other team members about some of the items that we can really make an impact with. Something that we do today.
Seth?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. Well, you know, when we do our rounding, we have our ATG checklist of things that, you know, to be looking for. And we also, I mean, I know I personally have my own checklist when I'm rounding of things that I'm looking for. So, you know, that ATG tool helps.
And then what quality outcomes would you say are associated with that? Keeping in mind that quality is defined by the customer. So what specifically is like in the ATG rounding tool, the rounding process that would provide value or quality to the customer?
Well, it's a checklist, right? So you're going through each item and saying, am I seeing this? Am I seeing that? And I guess that the quality is defined by that ATG tool, whether or not you're finding these you know, findings.
Right. And I think it's a good point too, because I think how that relates also, those tools are, you know, they might be specific to the Department of Health. They walk through and they come and do an inspection. And so many of these items that we see on these rounding tools that we do tie right back to, you know what, are we looking at what the Department of Health, you know, focused on last time even?
And environmental care, right?
That's right. And so those are where we're tying, I mean, those are right back to that score we get when the health department leaves, and we can have a really big impact on it. It's a great example.
Matt Kimler, you were next.
Yeah, so we got a guy that checks the temperatures and humidities in the operating rooms daily, every day, to make sure that we're in range. Because that stuff gets out of range, then
I used to do that at night.
yeah, we could have infection problems for the patients when they're having their operations, and just to stay compliant with our ranges that we have to stay in.
Yeah. Thanks. Brian?
Sure. I think one thing that we could, and most of us probably do, but if you're on a unit or you're doing rounding, is talk to the staff of that unit. Hey, is there anything else that you're aware of that we can do? You know, sometimes it's as simple as talk about patient satisfaction, a light bulb in a room or on an overhead, you know, over the bed. So, simple things. We had an issue yesterday where we had a leak up in our NICU, and it was leaking down behind the control panel, and there was a line isolation panel just next to it too. So we had to get the staff to move that infant and tent it off and come and address the leak. You know, it's just being aware of your surroundings, really, and just looking for everything, you know, not necessarily just what's on the list, but everything, you know, just be aware.
And it's not always about somebody, hey, you got to put a ticket in so I can go take a look at it sometimes.
Right. I mean, that's why we had the self-created or self-identified too, you know. So.
Yep, that's awesome. Good call out. Dusty?
Yeah, we use a daily logbook to check all the isolation rooms in the hospital to make sure they got negative pressure, basically for patient and staff protection, because those are either belt driven or direct driven and exhaust through the roof of the building. So if something's bad, we can get to it and fix it. So that's something we do every day.
Yeah. Nope, that's good stuff. And then you know, as we do some of this stuff, we gotta, I think some of the thought goes behind, so how are we validating this as well? How are we measuring it? And think about, you know, as we walk through this process today, you know, take it, and how do we take it a step further and improve that process? And so that's really what we're trying to keep everybody's focus on. I don't know if anybody has anything else they want to throw out there for things that they do for quality. Lindsay, you got any other comments or thoughts?
I would say that customer service, Brian, you brought it up of talking to other team members as you're going about rounding, but also thinking about aid it. So aid it, acknowledge the patient, introduce yourself, talk about the duration, explain what you're doing and the time it will take to complete that work. That's a practice that everyone should be doing anytime they enter an occupied patient room, and also acknowledging their visitors. So that would be an element of customer service that would be in direct relationship to quality, as well as the visitors who are, you know, in your facilities going to see someone they very much love and care about. They're probably, as you know, elevated anxiety and stress. They're not always thinking very clearly. So anything that you can do for wayfinding, walking them to where they're going, smiling, acknowledging them, all of those like little things would contribute to quality. And then, so how would you go about making sure that everyone's doing that? That's just through observation and reminding your direct reports to maintain that level of service.
Yeah, I think it's a great point too, because I think it's interesting that some of the best rounders that we have that I've seen that have gone out and done it have been facility people. They get a very good connection with the patient sometimes, and it's just it's been really a great interaction. I've even had a couple people that have been like employee of the year just because of how positive and how much of an impact they have on a patient. You know, we're not direct caregivers, but we can definitely have a big impact on them.
Okay, great input from everyone. Let's talk a little bit about the Pareto principles. And that first statement here, paragraph, pretty much defined it. The Pareto principles also known as the 80-20 rule, states that roughly 80% of the effectives comes from 20% of the input. That is why, it's so important that we understand when we start to discuss the input side of it, what are we feeding into our discussions, our analysis from that viewpoint? Next.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at a Pareto principle, because that statement Tyrone just make is there's a really simple way to look at that, and it kind of explains how that 80-20 rule really works. And so let's go to the next slide. And so take this upon looking at some data. Facility manager notices 3 top expenses: refrigeration leaks, compressors, evaporation tools. So assess expense of the chiller. So on the 80-20 rule, you can see this list here. So refrigerant leaks is 25% of the failures, compressor failures is 20%, and evaporator tube fouling 15%. So there's other failures as well, but you can see that in the 80-20 rule, there's 3 things on there that really make up almost 50% of the failures. So with that principle, the focus on this Pareto principle that it identifies is going to be those 3 things. And then, did I just go to the wrong one? I'm sorry. Oops, I lost.
Lizzie, I think you're on mute.
Slide 19, I think we're at. Okay, so just to keep going on this, there's by analyzing recent complaints, the engineering team prioritizing the 20% of issues. This is another example of a Pareto. So when taking a look at their database, they have slow to respond to work order requests, too noisy in patient care areas, lack of communication about ongoing issues, consistent quality of repairs leading to repeated issues. These are all things that get tracked. And so again, just back to the Pareto principle of which ones are the most repetitive, and that's what you capture in a Pareto, is looking for not just 3 things, it's 80%, 20%. So whatever that identifies.
This goes back to that initial question of, when does the process start to get in the way of improvement? And so there are many things that you could do to address any of these issues. So the point of this is to verify that your output is worth the outcome. So there, we have reasons for complaints for work orders or really anything else. And there we could go about trying to do everything we can to remedy those complaints so that we start to reduce the number. But if we're not focused on what's going to make the most impact, then, and you can think about that as outcome. So making sure that whatever you're putting into the process, that your output is going to give you the maximum outcome.
All right, so we're going to have another little group discussion real quick. So just start thinking about your daily activities and about your workflow patterns and your interactions, things that come up, so using the 80-20 with that Pareto principle, in your workflow, how could you see where this might be applicable, or it might have some impact on what your daily work is, or reports generated, or does anybody have any examples of what there might be to use the Pareto in order to validate or go through this process? Steve?
Yeah, I'd say in the almost 3 years I've been at Matthews, most of the money I've spent has probably been out in the chiller plant, repairing chillers, towers, generator cooling systems. So I guess focusing on what I could do out there to be more cost effective would help the overall department budget. I mean, some of that's definitely age of equipment, but some of that's stuff breaking down faster than it should as well. So
That's a good point, because age of equipment would definitely be one of the questions when it comes up to, you know, of what you're analyzing.
yeah. I think it's hard sometimes to dig down in that budget. Like you start digging, you'll see what companies you're paying what to, but then you got to dig further to see what you actually paid that company to do. And so it's just time. Everything's time. You know, do you have an hour or two to sit down and dig into that data? And so.
Good point.
That's good stuff. What about, go ahead, Linz.
Brian, did you have your hand raised?
Yeah. I kind of looked at my job role because I'm somewhat of a dual role where locksmith and door repair maintenance. And really the 80-20 rule I've said for a while, about 20% of my work comes from actual physical locksmith type work. And the other 80% is more doors and stuff like that. I've been in some conversation recently about the ATG reports and fire door issues that's going on, and trying to look at the reoccurring issues and whatnot. And I could probably apply this principle and come up with some valuable information there, you know.
Yeah.
I got some doors for you, Brian. Come on down.
Hey, where is Matthew at? I've been trying to help you guys out. I just can't get anybody to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, that's a good example. I think we probably see that a lot here too. We have a locksmith / other items and doors, and stays very busy, but that would be interesting to see what the Pareto said on that one.
Steve, your hand is still up. Is that on purpose? No? Okay.
Okay, should we move forward? Okay, David touched on this a few minutes ago. We kind of discussed what is process improvement. And as we remind ourselves, process improvement is a systematic approach to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of organization processes. Next. Why is process improvement important? You know, we kind of all ask that question, you know, when we start to be called on to look at various processes and things in that nature. But if we really dive in and focus why it's important, it's to ensure our patient safety, improve patient satisfaction, it streamline operations, improve the quality of care, and compile with regulatory agencies, and reduce costs. Now, when I look at these components, I look back at what our Novant cause is, the statement that we read earlier, and each one of these components embraces what our cause is all about and the purpose and why we do things that we are doing. Next.
Okay, so just an overview of how to do process improvement. So this is just very high level. Analyze current processes. So, you know what, you can't improve something you don't know what your current state is. Do you want to know exactly what you got going on? So analyze, identify, okay, what areas can be impacted for improvement. So when you identify, you're drilling down and you're trying to get to the point where you use tools to identify areas that can be improved on. And then implement is the last one. And so this is where you go and you make the changes and you implement that process improvement. And then you start verifying and go to the next. Sorry. Yep.
Okay. All right. Let's just look at an example, you know, to kind of put things in perspective. You know, our hospital facility maintenance management team needs to ensure that they respond quickly and efficient to calls for assistance. Let's just look at the maintenance carts. For example, in this scenario, it talks about each cart was standardized for essential tools. So when we look at the setup of our carts, we want to make sure we got the right tools that we need to perform our repairs or services or whatever. And the other thing that it talks about, you know, less, in this case, they're talking about staging carts in selective areas within the departments that you might be focusing on making repairs from that viewpoint. Next. And then we want to make sure that the maintenance cart is clearly labeled what's in within each drawer. So you're not spending a lot of time searching for items through multiple drawers from that viewpoint, which is very important because time is of importance, particularly when we're taking care of maybe a patient room service or whatever from that viewpoint. So just to look at some of the standard practices that we're using and what we should be implementing, this is a good example how important process improvement can be effective for us.
So let's talk about Six Sigma for a quick second. So Six Sigma is a process that's been out there for a long time. And I think Lindsay might have made reference to it as well, that, you know, Toyota was a big Six Sigma processing organization. And so I've worked for GE for many years, and I'm actually a green belt certified in Six Sigma, which was it's a fun process. It takes a lot of time. And then so just to kind of go down a little bit, Six Sigma, what it kind of represents right here. So it's kind of interesting that the statistical representation of a process with only 3.4 defects per million opportunities. So, you know, the 5 nines and a 6 outcomes in a Six Sigma. So 5 Sigma is referenced as a 99.97 capacity. Achieving the Six Sigma, you know, this just requires a commitment to quality. And, you know, there's a lot of companies out there that have done that. And Toyota, I think, was one that was very recognized for that, because they did an incredible job with their Six Sigma and the quality that they were able to achieve.
Okay. When we talk about process improvement, it is an ongoing process. You know, in many cases, when we look at various processes and things, we can't just necessarily say we have put a final fix on that solution. It's increments. As we continue to move forward, we will be tweaking those processes from that viewpoint. And that's the point that is driving here. We're continuing to reduce our waste. We're increasing our value to our customers, what we're truly looking at from that viewpoint. So as we move forward, eliminating inefficient initiatives, we will continue to be looking at those scenarios and tweaking our process as we move forward.
Okay, so this is the Rumbler-Bach matrix. And so this is a tool to map out how processes can be improved and aligned with the broader organizational goals. So this is, I can kind of walk through this. I'm sorry, I got my notes right here. And so this is how it helps you understand. So you see, you have the organization, you have process, and you have performer. And so this goes, and this aligns with the management and the design and goals. And so you complete this in order to kind of scope out and define what your processes are and where you're going to focus on in your performance needs.
Okay. What is total quality management, and the acronym known as TQM? You know, when we look at total quality management, it is a comprehensive management approach focusing on continuous improvement from that viewpoint. It involves the participation of all employees in the organization. So that's one of the keys to this. When we talk about total quality management, it involves all of us. By breaking down silos and fostering cross-function collaboration, we are moving in the direction that we're engaging the entire organization, and that's what total quality management can be all about.
Okay, now taking a look at this slide. So again, on total quality management, essentials for lean continuous improvement. And so I think everybody's been exposed to that in lean as well. So promotes a culture of safety, or of quality, sorry, fosters a collaborative environment, focuses on customer satisfaction, encourages waste reduction. So this is just a process improvement with a focus on total quality management.
Okay, when we look at waste reduction, is a core component of TQM and Lean from that viewpoint. The inefficiencies, the processes, the defects, the non-value added activities are eliminated to achieve higher standards. So these are just some of the basic components we're looking at when we look at the total quality management and Lean concepts.
All right, so waste costs money. So waste can be a lot of different things. It's an input or activity. So I think Lindsay made reference to it before. So MUDA is a Lean word, and it means waste. And so it's used pretty often when you're doing an A3 or you're doing some kind of process improvement and you're using the Lean process. And so a type 1 MUDA might be essential in certain circumstances. It's involved a task. A type 2 is not essential to the task, but it could be something that should be removed from what you're currently doing.
Okay. So as we talk about 7 MUDAs, we want to make sure we understand 7 MUDA does not add value to your process. And when we look at some of those waste concepts, we look at overproduction, correction, inventory, motion, convenience, overprocessing, and waiting. And we're going to go into a little bit more in depth on some of these.
Okay, so the first one, let's just talk about overproduction movement. And I'm just going to read this description right here. Overproduction refers to producing more items than needed or sooner than required, which leads to excessive inventory and increased storage costs. So just in that alone, you can see where costs would be relative to an excessive inventory and excessive storage. So MUDA can be defined. This type of waste can result in hidden problems such as defects, increased lead times, inefficient resources, ultimate reducing overall processes. So there's how are you producing this? What are some of the items that impact it? How can plant engineering remove overproduction waste? So thinking about some of this, implement a just-in-time maintenance approach. Schedule maintenance tasks based on real-time equipment usage and condition rather than fixed schedules. So, as we analyze how we do our maintenance, how do we improve the failures that happen? Taking a look at that. Align maintenance activities closely with actual needs. So those are just some examples of some waste.
When we look at correction MUDA, we're talking about rework. And in this case, this type of waste can lead to increased costs, delays, customer satisfaction. But how can plant engineering remove correction waste? Implement preventive maintenance and quality control measures, ensure equipment, systems, and documentations are maintained, and defect issues before they result in failure.
All right, let's talk about inventory real quick on that. So inventory refers to waste associated with holding excess inventory, which does not add immediate value. So kind of taking a look at this in the plant engineering way, the just-in-time inventory system. I mean, you can look at this like, so we do this in our daily activity. For just-in-time inventory, we have in some facilities, we have closets, we have little parts storage that are identified as needed because they're positioned in a place where you don't have to walk back to the shop to get the part. You're going to use these. They're pretty common repair parts, and so you position them close to where you're going to need them. That's a really good example of how you could use an inventory MUDA.
Motion MUDA. This is unnecessary movement of people that does not add value to the process. And I want to relate to this, how can plant engineering remove motion waste, optimize the layout of workspace and equipment to reduce unnecessary movement? I can relate to this. This is part of the initiative that we took on when we implemented the vendor managed inventory programs at each of our plant engineering cribs. Inventory was scattered all over the place, but we started to put things in commodity groups and things. So when our technicians would come in and do a search, they would have everything in categories. Along with that, having blueprints and layout of the rooms where everything is located is helpful as well, because time lost searching for parts is critical to meeting customer satisfaction.
So conveyance muda, so I'm kind of using the same example in this, so that I just used for the inventory waste, because they really go hand in hand. So conveyance is just cutting down on transportation, on steps, maybe, how do you make it more convenient? So if you identify an inventory, you're doing it to be more efficient, time repair, you're taking care of the problem quicker, but in the same breath, you're doing conveyance as well. You're taking steps out of your process, and you're also improving the efficiencies of that repair and the inventory.
Okay. Over processing muda, Steve, this kind of reflects back to your initial question. When we're looking at over processing, performing more work or adding more features than necessary in our process. So if we look at this, we say, how can we remove over processing waste, streamline processes to focus only on the essential task, avoid unnecessary steps that do not add value. So that's so important as we are trying to make sure we're not over processing our process as we move forward.
So waiting muda. So it's kind of self-explanatory. So how do we do this in plant operations for schedules? Kind of the best thing that we can do is we try to coordinate with the caregivers up in the rooms. We try to do things when rooms are available. How do we go about getting that? What tools do we need to do the job? Are they available? Can we react quickly when we need to do something? So these are parts of waste that when we're going through a process improvement, these are outliers that we would identify and then be part of our improvement process of how we take action.
So other forms of waste, this is very important that we engage our stakeholders, our frontline users of the areas that would be impacted the greatest on these processes that we're looking at. So we talk about encouraging ideas from team members. That's so important. And then when we look at the talent that we are calling on to help us out, identify employees' strengths and putting them in positions to succeed from that viewpoint. And then last, obvious capital has played a role. So investing in upgrade, improvement of training will obviously help us to meet the goals that we're trying to accomplish in our process excellence.
All right, so let's just take a second and we're going to have a group discussion again, but these forms of waste, just think about them, and in your everyday activities, how is this waste impacted, or what items do you kind of identify as, where you could improve on? What's waste that you may have in your areas? And this could be things, as far as how do you get your work order? How quickly do you get it? Are you notified in the timely manner? It could be, are you standing around waiting on somebody to do something before you can make a repair? Go ahead, Steve.
I'll be the one to say it. It's this Infor upgrade.
Great, huh?
I used to spend maybe 2 or 3 hours total in a week signing off on invoices to be paid, and now it's all I do. I'm trying to track them down and see if people got paid. You guys know it. You've all been through it, but I'd say 80-90% of my time is now wasted on Infor.
I concur to that. I think I'm not even sure what my percentage is, but it's very high as well. Same thing.
I echo that as well.
I mean, I understand the need that we couldn't keep using what we had, but this could have been thought out better.
Yeah, and it's a really good point because I don't think anybody here would disagree with that. That everybody's time's being impacted. I think, even Carl made reference to that in the summit this last time about that M4 process and how important it was that we did it and how it's going to get better and it's going to be, a great process in the future. It's just not a great process right now. So hopefully that comes sooner than later, right?
Yeah, and I think it's cost him some loyalty points because it kind of makes you wonder who's making the decisions when they get rid of all their help desk people, outsource them to a company that doesn't know us. At the same time, they're releasing this process. I mean, I got a part-time admin that's calling me crying once a week, and she's not the only one. So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pain going on right
It's
now.
crushing team morale, and I'd like to see the data at the end of how many team members we lose over it. So.
Yeah, we better get off that one. We'll go to something else. Casey, bring us back.
Sorry.
All right.
I think one of the biggest issues that we see as far as trade service here is what slows us down is getting material. The lead time, I think it has to go back to what Steve was talking about, the new process and the changes in that. I mean, it'll take a month, if not a little bit longer, for us to even get material in after ordering it. And we're having to, jobs start stacking up at that point, and then you start falling behind.
Mhm.
It's becoming a headache.
It's a good point because that creates another process too. That's one that you want to avoid, and that's the how do I do an end around? How do I get this done without going through the process because it ain't working? And that's what we want to avoid too.
Absolutely.
Seth? Oh, he's on the phone. Brian, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was going to mention something similar to what Casey said. And my question, I guess, is at what point, you want to keep par level material or whatever and not have a big inventory. But when we can't get material, at what point does it become, the more evil side of having a larger inventory?
Right.
Especially with inflation and prices going up, where you can buy stuff cheaper than today than you can tomorrow. I don't know if that's really looked at too. I know some of it's cash flow, but at times when you can't get material, I've had stuff that I've tried to order for 3 months and don't seem to be able to get it here. And I have to go back to my customer and say, hey, I've ordered it, be patient, it's coming, and cover everybody else's, what's, not just mine, but the whole plant engineering as a group and into supply chain too.
That's a good point. This goes back to the continuous process improvement, that whole process. How do we keep revisiting it to make sure we do get that inventory right? And so not an easy process, especially with the bar that gets moved like it is right now.
Yeah, and not to beat a dead horse, but then we have trade service people or whatever that go out to the supply house and they can't get the material because we're on credit hold. I mean, I've seen it go in big circles over years, where we're on, we're off, we're on, we're off. We can get it, we can't get it. So as far as the process and getting things done, that's kind of what we do in plant engineering is get things fixed and hopefully quickly.
Right.
And some of the processes has, slowed it down considerably.
Yeah, we got some mom pop vendors out there that can't afford to wait the 90 days for payment, and we see a lot of vendors just opt not to really engage with us anymore because it takes so long. So it's so important that we just try best we can. We'll get there, but boy, I'll tell you that it's a real conversation you get to have with them. Melissa?
I feel like I spend most of my time chasing my tail with following up on vendors and their deadlines that they were supposed to meet, and constantly asking the question, doing the follow-ups. And then I think it caused duplication in work. A lot of time we get a lot of scope creep in our projects. And so you'll be midway through and then we start all over again. And I find it very frustrating.
Yeah. Is that because the right people don't get to the table to start, and they even though you try to get everybody there, somebody doesn't show up and they
I think
recircle
it's a
that.
mix of that and then us letting the person who screams the most get their way, to be
Mm.
honest.
Mm-mm. Seth?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but all those things with the inventory and Infor and all that is a definite pain. But I feel like I'm chasing my tail trying to get someone hired here at the hospital. I've been put in request. The guy left here in July, which is a terrible time for our organization changing this process. But I spent a lot of time doing my third man's job here, and I'm trying to do my own job too. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that I feel like they're slipping through the cracks because I'm having to do somebody else's work.
I don't think you're alone either. I think there's a few folks that struggle with that. Same thing. Anybody else got anything they want to share? I mean, and so just want to make a statement because a lot of these kind of outside of our control in a lot of areas, things that are impacted by other people and other processes that are in place. So it is interesting to take a look at that and what you can affect in your area and how do you go about streamlining or trying to make that better is where we would probably want to focus on some of those items. But there's definitely items outside of the control where stakeholders are not us and in driving that, and we're just trying to fill the gap right now in a lot of those areas. So an interesting way of trying to do a process improvement, that you can only affect it so much.
Well, now would be a good time to take a break. Do we want a 5-minute or a 10-minute break? 5-minute? 10-minute?
10.
These don't add up.
Let's take a 10.
Okay. All right, 10-minute break. So I will see everyone at 10:26.
All righty. Okay, I think we could go ahead and get started. Back. Look like everyone is pretty much have joined us. All right, let's continue to talk about process improvement methods. And what I understand at this point, there was a email that went out with a handout. So each of you should have a template that is going to summarize the next few slides that we're going to be discussing. All right, so we already have touched on what is process improvement. Now we want to talk about the various methods. If we focus on it, these methods such as Six Sigma and Lean continue to operate our operations by focusing on data-driven decision-making and process standardization. So when we look at the various methods, we're going to talk about the 5S, Combine, Diplomatic. The next one, I'm just going to read DMADV. Lindsay, you can help me out. What is the correct pronunciation for it, if there is? But then PDSA, also, we will be looking at that.
All right, so just to take a look at this chart real quick. So this is a handout. So this is something that you'll be able to keep and have. So just as a quick, just run through this real quick. So what you have here is you have all the different, you have like the 5 different methods of process improvement. And then on the criteria, as you go down, you can see where purpose. So you go over to PDSA, it describes what the purpose is for PDSA and the DMAIC and the DMADV. And so you kind of can get some ideas, or it can help direct you to what type of process improvement that you want to use. And then for the description, it even has, you know, it kind of gets very, very specific. So down in phases, you can see where PDSA, plan, do, study, act. And then for DMAIC, it says define, measure, and analyze, improve, control. So it just kind of gives you, I'm not big on abbreviations, but this kind of gives you the definition as well. Anybody got any questions on that?
We're going to go through each of these. So this morning I sent out handouts and references for this class today, some of which we're going to be filling out together. Some of them are for you just to reference for polling questions coming up. This slide right here is in that PowerPoint attachment, along with the fishbone diagram and the 7 different types of MUDA. So you'll be able to find this table. We wanted to be able to provide it so that you can either share it with your team, print it out, reference it later. So this is what you have as part of your handouts package, and it will be available in the learning management system too.
All right, so this is an interesting one, the 5S method. So this is like, just to kind of overview, it's kind of like to clean a space up, organize your work area, do something. So just as a comment, I just want to share with anybody a 5S that we did when we first started with the lean process. So we had some lean experts, we'll say, and so they were going around and doing some helping us with 5Sing. And so we had a maintenance mechanic, and so they were going through each of their areas, and they were 5Sing their spaces that they had, you know, remotely out in the areas that were kind of looking at that. And so so one of our maintenance technicians had been here quite a while, was pretty set in his ways, and we had a couple that were really were difficult to interact with. And so just you know, there's people that will help you facilitate a 5S, and then also you know, we have to want to do that change as well and be a part of it. So after about a day and a half with the maintenance guy, she came to me and she told me this was probably the worst experience she's ever had in her entire life, trying to clean up a space that it ain't happening. It was not going to happen. No way, no how. So yeah, it can be a painful experience as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to touch on the first one, is sort. Sort involved removing unnecessary items from the workplace, from the workspace, and keeping nearby only the tools and material needs for current operations. We kind of touched on that in our example when we were talking about our maintenance cart. and placing it. So this step helps us to eliminate clutter. It reduces distractions and creates a more organized and efficient environment.
And so the next one in Straighten, and this is, I mean, these are pretty straightforward when it comes to organizing. This one emphasizes the importance of having a designated place for everything. So that just, you know, the whole mood of things. So it's taken away any confusion and everything can be very organized. It's much easier to work in.
Shine, we talk about maintaining cleanliness. This practice helps us to prevent deterioration or ensure that we have a safety environment.
And then standardize involves creating consistent procedures. So, you know, this is how often we keep it clean. You know, this can even be standardizing in your, you know, I got 30 minutes a day, I'm going to input data into my work order system, or, you know, how do you do your capture your self-identified work orders? Have you got a process for that? So when you standardize stuff, it really creates a hardwired experience that's going to happen more than not.
And then we talk about the sustain, which is the fifth one. It talks about the disciplines and maintaining the 5 S's practices over a period of time. So in this case, we are reviewing and reinforcing the processes that we are focusing on implementing.
All right, this will be group discussion time again. So just for taking a look at the 5S method and just trying to say, okay, so where would that benefit me in my workflow? You know, how would somebody that reports to me benefit from it? Or, you know, what do you see out there that how this could be beneficial for you? Or have you done something like this in the past? Yeah, my example of Ron was quite interesting, and I felt kind of bad too, because I didn't have that well supervised. So a maintenance tech that was probably a little bit of a live one, and put with a couple people that were trying to help him do a process that he had no part of. It created quite a comical situation. Yeah, we'll just say that.
Brian, did you have something to add?
Sure, I know that I've done similar things just in my workspace, and when it can get cluttered, and when it does get cluttered, the process does take longer. So I work better in a clean, neat environment and where the tools are in certain places. I have noticed other floor techs that have put different tools in certain places close to where they work, you know, so they're not walking all the way back to the shop to get a plunger, or to get a ladder, or to get X, Y, or Z, you know. And that's helped them, you know, save steps and get to the issues quicker.
Yeah, even and sometimes I think you even see you got people that eat in their area, or they store things, or they just have, you know, maybe they, you know, have opportunity there of working in their space.
Shall we move along?
I wanted to just to remind the group of the example Ben gave during our project management class. Do you remember when we were talking about the carpentry shop? And they he made he was sharing that they were like literally breaking their backs just moving lumber around unnecessarily. And one of the things that he didn't have the language at the time, but what they ended up doing is looking at the movement of the lumber, the tools, and the other materials when making cabinets or other furniture or whatever they needed to do. So they were bringing in lumber moving it to like the furthest point away and then bringing it like back closer to like where they were delivering it to actually build what they needed to for installation or construction. And he just through observation was like, why are we doing that? And so he, in his own way, he implemented 5S. And by doing that, he was able to reduce inventory, conveyance, movement, you know, the number of steps, transporting things around, and probably to some extent wait time. You know, anytime that you're able to remove steps, like physical steps in the process, you make it faster. He also said, because of the inventory thing, they had those tiny pieces of lumber. Do you remember that when he was just like, they were just like holding on to like these little scraps, and it was actually creating this like storage problem because they were just holding on to all these little things, and we had all these like tiny little scraps, and it was taking up a lot of space in our shop, impeding their ability to perform the work. So that's just a really great example of using 5S. And so sometimes I'm sure there are plenty of these methodologies and they sound like alphabet soup right now, but you're probably using most of them without having the language. And so one of our objectives for this class is to equip you with that vocabulary, give you some really basic definitions that you can then share with your team. Be like, hey, like we're actually saving waste by doing this. Like what are other ways that we can reduce waste?
Good points. Okay, let's talk about Kanban methods. As we talked about Muda, Muda was originated from a word in Japanese, and it's the same with Kanban. Kanban is a word originated from Japanese, and it actually defines as signboard or billboard is what Kanban is all about. So the example that we see here, you know, when we're looking at building this billboard, it's broken up into 5 categories. And you can see the topic or focus within each column from that viewpoint. But if we look at the backlog, this column represents all the tasks that needs to be done. We look at the next column, this is a sprint planning. This column contains the tasks that have been selected for the current sprint during the sprint planning meeting. And then we're in process, the work in process where the tasks actively being worked on by team members. And then we at the review and Q&A session, where once the tasks are completed, they move to this column to review the quality assurance. Did we actually meet the goal objectives that we were wanting to accomplish? And then obviously the 5th column here touches on the done, where the tasks have been completed and approved and moved to this column of completion. Next.
And so just referencing, you know, those areas identified by Tyrone. So basically setting a board up, going through, and I mean, very manual, very on the spot, you know, take and you write, stick, you know, dividing all of the identified issues, identified areas that you want to focus on. And so with that, you get the project flow kind of established. You get to see and identify any bottlenecks of possibilities of where you could be, you know, creating most of your issues. And then there could be some collaboration and transparency within a project. And so with these resources is how you kind of manage and do a process improvement.
Steve, did you have something?
I was just curious if this would be something helpful for like a to-do list too, just trying to keep track of where everything is, and or if there's something that you think would be more useful.
I have someone on my team that uses Kanban boards. So they put all their different tasks, it's just in certain categories, and it's usually like what's in planning, what's in process, what's in review or done. And like what Dave and Tyrone were saying, the biggest benefit is to see where your bottlenecks are. So if we start to get a lot of things that are like piling up in a certain category, why? Is it a process issue, a resource issue? Like what's going on there? So if you feel like your to-do list tends to get stuck in certain phases, having a Kanban board would be a really great way to illustrate that.
Thank you.
Okay, let's touch on DMATIC methods. Okay, this is used to identify root causes of inefficiencies. So when we look to the left side, we see that the chart indicator shows the 5 steps, which is define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. These steps sometimes overlap. So we have to be careful as we go through each one of these steps that there will, in many cases, be overlap as we go through the exercise of defining each of the functions.
Yeah, so let's just take the first one, the D. So the define phase of the DMAIC, you know, and most of this is going to align with other process improvement ways. So clearly identifying a problem, establishing project goals, and identifying project scope and objectives. And most of the time in the define phase on almost anything, it's going to be, you're going to drill down to a specific something that identifies exactly what the issue is and what the desired outcome is of what you're trying to do. So that is in your definition phase.
Okay, so one of the steps when we are looking at the define phase, we define a charter. And that charter pretty much define the project objective, the scope, and the key stakeholders. And within there, we're looking at the problem statement. We're defining the problem statement, the business case, the goals, the scope, the timeline, team roles and responsibilities, and stakeholders analysis. If you look to the left side, this is actually the team charter that I was involved with as we built the program for our plant engineering facilities for their tool cribs and things as we was designing that. And I just want to highlight here, a charter includes everyone who will be engaged or involved pretty much defined in the scope of the project. And I'm saying that for a reason. The initiative that we took on, we actually invited suppliers in on our project team, the ones that was going to be the primary suppliers. And I'm speaking of, in this case, it was like Granger, Graybar, Best Plumbing. Some of you can familiar with those. They were going to be our primary suppliers who was maintaining our vendor managed inventory program. So I just want to kind of put that out there. You have to totally look and see who is truly going to be impacting this project that you are looking at.
And so to go along with that, so, you know, once you develop that charter, you're going to have the work that starts is developing your problem statement. So your problem statement is taking your current state, which is what you have now, and trying to take what your desire is for an outcome with a process improvement. And so what you end up doing is making a problem statement that clearly states what you have now and what you want to improve and what you want it to improve to. So, you know, if you're going to fix something, your problem is very specific to driving a percentage to above a certain 75%. You know, it's a goal of something that's achievable, but you want it in your problem statement because that is where you want to everything that you do from the problem statement is tied back to your problem. I didn't explain it really well, but you get it. Is that me? Oops, hold on. And then okay. On this examples, we have your weak and strong problem statements. So as you're reading this, a weak problem statement is ambiguous and lacks specifics. You know, for this example that they give, the hospital's annual electrical costs were a certain dollar amount. The fiscal year, the hospital aims to reduce utility costs. Other data like peak usage and temperature fluctuations were identified as root causes for the inefficiency. So not very specific on data breakdown or what you're actually going to do. So a strong problem statement would be, so in the previous year, the hospital had, you know, a dollar amount in annual electrical cost. The hospital aims to reduce the annual cost by 20% this fiscal year by collecting company comparable utility data in similar facilities in the similar size zones. Other collected data like peak usage times and temperature fluctuations will identify the root cause. So it's just taking your desired outcome and identifying what your desired research is going to produce.
Okay. So as we continue through the process, one of the key tasks that we have to take on is building a business case. And I'm sure all of us in some manner has been involved in some situation that we had to participate in building a business case for some justification of spending money or improving a process, whatever it may be. But the purpose of the business case is to justify the project need and establish its value. If we are creating a true effective business case, it clearly articulates these impacts. The business case helps to secure buy-in from the stakeholders and the decision makers.
So let's chat about stakeholders a little for a second. So that is when you're thinking through your process of your project or whatever you're using, identifying those stakeholders is usually pretty easy. You just have to just think outside the little box a little bit, and who does that actually affect? And then when you're chatting and gathering that stakeholder information, you can use other people too to bounce off and say, hey, who else might this impact? There might be things that are unknown, you don't know, and so we want to approach this with the vision that there's no, we don't have silos. And so trying to include everybody that we really need. And a lot of times those silos are a little tough. And so I'll just point out that one of the groups that people are not as apt to involved in a process sometimes, just because of maybe that difficult level is infection control. And so a lot of times when we develop processes, stakeholders, infection control is one of them that has a great potential to assist, but they also can have a great potential to make things really difficult too. So I just wanted to throw that out there because, having that great relationship with everybody and not having silos, super important to gathering your stakeholders.
Another important element is the timelines. And this timeline, what we're doing here is mapping out the key milestones and activities that we wish to accomplish. This can be done in many ways, but one of the most effective tools that I know of is such as a Gantt chart, and to visualize the timelines, monitor the progress, and as we move forward. So it's imperative as we move through and defining our charter and everything, it's important that we truly define realistic, what are our milestones and the timelines that we hopefully to accomplish each of those milestones.
All right, let's talk about team roles a little bit. So team roles, pretty self-explanatory. When we're talking about that, as we're doing our project, we want to identify and have definite responsibilities. Who is the project sponsor? Who is the project champion? I mean, these clearly need to be defined. The team members needed and the subject matter experts. And so subject matter experts are, who's needed to make your project successful. And so that along with a lot of times when you have a team role, so another good person is like a timekeeper, like, some people that just keep it on track. So very important to set up that structure.
Okay, we also, during the process, we want to look at measuring our accomplishment, which involves collecting the data and establishing a baseline. That's very important that we complete that task. But when we're collecting the data, allow us for a quantitative understanding of the problem to dive in. So when we're looking at the various measurement phase, we want to identify the key matrix, determining the extent of the issue, how big is the problem. It's very important for us to understand that. And then setting benchmarks that would be used to assess the impact of the improvement.
All right, so one of those risk priority identifiers would be an FMEA. You guys may have heard this often. I think it's used pretty regularly as a risk tool. Failures, mode, and effect analysis. You know, this is a popular one that gets used quite often. So it's identified and enable or used to focus on high risk areas. So let's go to that. The FMEA process. So identify a potential failure, analyze each failure mode's effects on project objectives, assign severity, occurrences, detection, ratings, excess level. So this is, I'm sorry, I lost my place. This is your basic FMEA process flow. As you want to create failures, modes, effects, analysis, then all of these items is what you identify in order to risk and create the low, medium, and high processes in your identified area. And I'm not saying this one very well. Lindsay, do you want to, this is a really important one, and I'd like somebody to say it right.
Oh, well, I will do my best. You did just fine. Fortunately, Ben also shared this information with the team during the project management class, so everyone has seen it before. The beautiful thing about this model is that in a world where there are so many risks to evaluate and analyze, you certainly can't prioritize all of them by definition. Priority is one. So what this model does is it takes all the different risks that are identified that might disrupt a process. And it looks at, okay, how severe would it be? If the bad thing happened, how bad is it? Also, the occurrence, how often will the bad thing happen or could happen? How easily is it detected? And then you're categorizing that by, high, medium, or low. So you're looking at the frequency, the impact, the likelihood of all those different risks, ranking them in a really objective numerical way so that the ones that are at the top of the list you can address. Kind of going back to that 80-20 concept, like here's everything bad that could happen, but we're only going to focus on what's most likely and what's going to be most disruptive and be most frequent and easily detectable, et cetera. So that way you can develop action plans to address the highest ranking risks. Any questions about that? Awesome.
All right. So in this is like an example. So as we read through this, I think Lindsay did a pretty good job of kind of going through this already. So does anybody have any questions on that example?
Dave, I guess I also want to just highlight that was kind of example using the combine concepts flowing through.
This is actually, I know it looks like the Kanban. This is the FMEA. So we're just taking them through modes, effects, ratings, prioritization, and mitigation. The Kanban is just like a visual way to represent process flow, what's in the queue or planning phase, what's in process, what's in QA/QC, and what's done. So that's my fault. I made them look the same, but they are not the same.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying.
I would say this is a good that slide is also very good for reference. I would keep that one handy because I think it's very useful.
Okay, so moving along, when the Dematic analyze is the next phase of it. And the analyze phase is examine the data collected during the measure phase and identifying the root causes and inefficiencies and defects from that viewpoint. It really focuses on pinpointing the factors contributing to the problem as we go through. So as we go through and look at the analyze phase, we're focused on the root cause analysis, here are some of the tools that we'll be using: the root cause analysis, the fishbone diagram, root cause variation matrix, the Pareto chart that we touched on, and hypothesis testing as sampling of the data as we go through the analyze phase.
Okay, root cause analysis identifies the underlying causes of a problem, kind of self-describing. The goal of a root cause is to address the symptoms of an issue. It is typically used during the analyze phase of a project to identify, understand factors contributing to inefficiencies.
The improve phase, we're talking about the development and implementing the solution. In this phase, we also are testing and redefining these solutions, fine-tuning as we go forward. And then from there, at the end of the improvement phase or beginning to the control phase, team will have to revisit the FMEA tools and identify potential failures in the process.
Okay, and then the last phase, the control. So this is where you establish your standard operating procedures. It's where you're going to monitor. This is where you're going to take your process improvement that you made, and then you're going to make sure they're implemented and maintained.
And then when we look at the control plan, we're establishing and monitoring the mechanisms and standard operating procedures to sustain the improvement. So we're focusing here to create a control plan to review the updated processes, suggest improvements for future projects, and determine who owns the process.
All right, so an alternate root cause analysis is the DMA-DV method. And so it stands for define, measure, analyze, design, and verify. So this process guides teams through creation and validation of a new process or product from concept to launch. So a little more detailed in that. And then uses DMAIC for processes, existing processes. So the two that sound familiar. So DMA-DV is new, DMAIC is existing processes.
Okay. So as we dive further, we're talking about the design, and this involved creating detailed plans and specifications for the new process. And part of that is developing prototypes, simulations, and detailed designs as we go through to conclude our design.
And in the verify phase, this is when you're validating the process or product before you implement. The phase includes pilots, customer feedback, final adjustments. This is kind of like kicking the tires.
Okay. Okay, so the next method is the PDSA, which stands for Plan, Do, Study, Act. This method provides a structural approach to continuous problem solving and process optimization. As we can see here, by continuous cycling through each step, organizations drive ongoing improvements and adapt to change. And as we spoke, some of these will overlap as we go through each of the processes.
Okay, so PDSA, the plan. So I do want to just point out real quick too that for most of the process improvements that you're going to see, hear about, or do, PDSA seems to be one that comes up often. So this is the one that usually gets talked about, and especially in the environment of care and the different management plans and most of those that we do. So just wanted to point out this is definitely a very popular one that's used the most. Developing detailed strategies. Teams may use it. Tools like root cause analysis, data collection. And so these are some of the items that are used with the plan. And So again, back to this has the same as the other plans where when you make the plan, it has to be a very detailed statement that identifies your current state and what you want to achieve in your process improvement.
In the do phase, you're actually implementing. And most of the time, you want to do this on a small scale to make sure that your control environment and you're able to test the effectiveness before you roll out the entire scope of the project. And that would consist of piloting a new process, training the employees, making changes to the existing process as we move through it.
And then your study phase, this is when you're taking a look at your data, you're analyzing it. What you want here is, are you implementing the desired effect? You're going through all your deliverables. So you're measuring, you're studying right before you do your act, which is coming up.
And then when we get to the act phase, this involves making a decision based on the results of the study phase. So if the plan is successful, then yes, we will fully implement across the organization and the changes are standardized. If it's not successful, team return to the plan phase to redefine their approach. Steve, this kind of supports your initial question as well of overdoing and things. This is where you're really finalizing, is it an effective plan that we want to implement?
Okay, here's a sample of a PDSA with the environment of care. And I think these are generic pretty much as far as the description on these. So this is your plan title. So when you're going through this, your plan author, what are we trying to improve? How will we know that the change made is an improvement? What do we have that could result in this improvement? And so these are some of the items that you, in your statement, you're making your statement. So if you drop down in your plan, this is kind of helpful because if you take this template, you can get help with how each phase kind of gets rolled out. So it gives you helpful information about what that phase is and how you go about it and what is detailed in that phase.
Who has seen this template before? Steve, you have? Anyone else? No.
In my email this morning.
Oh, good. Yay. Oh, thank you.
I've seen it before too, Lindsay.
You have? Okay. Have you filled it out or been part of filling it out?
Yeah, right before I left Mint Hill to come over to property management side.
Okay, so it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We are going to fill out a PDSA. So in groups, you're going to break off in a little bit and talk about what project you would want to apply the PDSA process. And obviously, we're not going to go collect data and we can't observe what happened because it hasn't, this is fictional, right? But if you can, as a group, work together to talk about, okay, what process would we want to improve using this method? How might we collect the data? What data would be important to the stakeholders? What would we want to go back and observe to verify if it was successful or not? If it's not successful, how might we further collect data or revise the plan? So you'll talk through all of that. I encourage you to think about a process that you're currently fighting, but can also influence. So it's really, there are many different problems and broken processes out there. I would ask that you try and focus on something that you would have at least some influence or control over. So like N4, for example, wouldn't it be nice to go back in time and, wipe the slate clean? But it's a process that's already been implemented and you're sort of having to work within it. Maybe rather than focusing on something like that big and complicated, you try and narrow this down on something that's a little bit more manageable.
Okay, I think these next couple slides is continuing to the template from that viewpoint, but I want to stroll to the next one, Lindsay. I wanted to highlight this one in particular. As we talked about, you know, as we are looking at our control plans and things, a lot of times we want to put matrix in place. And this is an example, you know, we see chart graphs and things that's monitoring our activity. There's types of matrix that we can use to help us also as we continue to define and make sure that we have a control process. Okay. Any questions, comments about the samples that we have are sharing here? If not, then go ahead, Lindsay, you have something?
I don't think I attached this example in our handouts for class. Would it be helpful if I provided this complete example as a Word document, or are the slides sufficient? I'm seeing yes, it would be helpful. Okay, cool. I will do that.
Yeah, it's good to have examples.
Yeah.
Right.
Happy to help.
Thanks. Okay, now we have opportunity to do a poll activity. Reviewing the scenarios on the next slides and decide which process improvement method to use. So I think with this, you have a handout that can assist you as we read through each scenario, and we've taken a poll to see which of the methods best fits the scenario. So I'm going to read the first one here. Question 1, a team is implementing a small scale improvement to make an increment improvement. Which process improvement method should they use? And we're doing this based on a poll, Lindsay? Poll, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this is the moment where Lindsay realizes she didn't do what she was supposed to and add Slido to the poll questions. So if you could please accommodate my failure by typing into chat which process improvement method you would recommend. And if we want to talk about it, let's do it. But PDSA, DMADV, DMAIC, 5S, you've got that table in the PowerPoint slide. So if you just want to read through real quick and then type in what your responses are in the chat. And then if we see any divergence, let's talk about it. If we see convergence, then we can still talk about, you know, why that's the best method.
Okay. Okay.
Does anyone disagree with PDSA? And they're like, wait a minute, I would use a different one. I'm not leading. That's just a general. I'm not. Yeah, Dusty.
Okay. So it is correct. PDSA is the method that you should use.
Dusty, did you have a question? No, you're good. Okay.
Okay, we're going to the next question.
Do you want to explain why PDSA is the appropriate method, just in case anyone had a different thought?
Well, they pretty much talk, as we said, it goes through the entire process, plan, do, act, and respond. So each of those steps actually gives you an opportunity to dive in further to address the component of it.
Well, so this one, the PDSA is good for small scale. When you go with a DMAIC or a DMADV, those rely really heavily on data. And as you know, sometimes you want to make a change in a process that you just don't have time to like gather data and scrub through it, analyze the data to make a decision. So in those moments for smaller scale projects where you want to make incremental improvements, little changes at a time, see how they, you know, we're going to make a little tweak here, see how it goes, keep tweaking. PDSA is perfect for that. Whereas a DMAIC or a DMADV, that's going to be like a longer term project, usually requiring a project charter and a ton of data collection.
Okay, question 2. So let's take a look at this. A team wants to reduce the variation in water usage across different hospital departments by optimizing the water distribution system. Which process implementation method should they use? So I'll just make a comment on this so for you to select one, there was a couple of them. One was for new processes and one was for existing processes. And so this might be like existing process that we would want to make a change for.
See, that's leading.
Oh,
I'm just giving you a hard time. That's what leading looks like. I love the hinting though. That was great.
Nothing wrong with helping out.
Right. There we go.
All right.
Good work, team. Dave, did you want to elaborate on any of that? Or does anyone have a question about why it wouldn't be something different? Yeah, so in this one, obviously you would have data, right? So water usage data, you're going to get that from your meters. Some of you might be able to collect this in your building management system. The most archaic method is through your utility bills and logging and tracking, how much water you're using from month to month. So you have the data and historical data. It's pretty easy to get to. So, and it's also, like Dave mentioned, an existing system, existing process consuming waters being the process. So DMAIC would make sense here.
Okay, so question 3. A team wants to design a new waste management process to meet updated regulatory requirements and ensure environmental compliance. Which process improvement method should they use?
Does anyone have a vote other than DMADV? And and then do one of you, Brian, Justin, Gary, want to explain why you chose DMADV?
Sure.
Sure, I will.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
So that one, again, is more around the new processes. So that's, something that's not existing there. That's kind of what keeps me off to that one versus some of the other ones.
Okay. And then realizing that DMADV is about data collection, what data do you think that would be, what would be important to collect for this process improvement?
So the data around the waste management and reducing, the waste management piece of it. And I think we could measure that, right, based off of our current versus future waste that we're sending out.
Yeah, so everyone's required to maintain a manifest, and you're categorized by either a small quantity contributor or large quantity contributor. If you've got a waste management company that comes and picks up your regulated waste and also your general waste, so you can look at that manifest from month to month or whatever the cadence is in which they're picking up your waste and see, okay, are we meeting the new, I would imagine, EPA, or what is your North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality? Is that right?
yeah, DEQ.
Yeah, the DEQ. So whatever, if they have new regulatory standards or the EPA does, then you can, and it's probably about reducing waste. You would be able to track that.
All right, let's in question 4. So this will be an easy one. The team needs to recognize and maintain the tools and spare parts storage area to improve accessibility and reduce retrieval time. Which process improvement method should they use? You can just think crusty old maintenance guy, and then you remember.
All right, Brian, why did you go with 5S?
As Gary mentioned, talked about having a clean workspace, having tools in places that are easily accessible and organized.
Great. And it was the only one left.
Oh, okay.
So I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I had a question 5, but okay.
Oh, you did. Oh, you did. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay. A team needs to visually tracking the status of ongoing maintenance tasks to ensure timely completion and prevent workflow bottlenecks. Which process improvement method should they use? Okay. Okay. Steve, why did you select Combine? Steve, you're on mute.
So I get different screens popping up to get to the mute button.
Yeah.
Just the way it optimizes efficiency and keeps things organized.
Okay. Okay. All right.
If you ever want to identify bottlenecks in a process, Kanban is absolutely the way to go. All right, now we can move on.
Okay, so we have a group discussion. A hospital plan engineering department wants to improve its rounding process to reduce survey findings. If we use the PDS model, what steps would they take?
You have a handout for this. Okay, so if you go to a Word document and it says, I think it's like PDSA group discussion LO1. Does everyone see that?
Lizzie, can you pop it up on the screen so they can?
I will, but I want everyone to make sure that they can access it.
Yeah.
Um,
The group activity PDSA scenario.
it
Oh, I
looks-
see.
It
I got
looks improving the rounding process.
Yep, I got it.
You got it?
It was the first attachment.
Thank you, Melissa.
Okay.
Casey, are you still looking for it? I see your eyebrows going.
Yeah, I am. I'm having to close one screen down to open another one
Okay,
because I'm not on a split monitor.
okay. Matt, do you have it? Kimler?
Sorry, yes, I do have it.
Seth, do you have, oh, Seth stepped away, didn't he? Dusty, do you have it? Gary?
Yes, I have it.
Thank you. Brian, you have it? Excellent. Justin, you have it?
Yes.
Perfect. Did we lose the other Matt? Oh, there you are. You're hiding. Do you have it?
Yeah, I got it.
Perfect. Great. All right. So you have the answer to this question. So hopefully you can use the handout to facilitate this discussion. I'm going to put that in the chat.
So is this where we want to have a group discussion on the plan?
Yeah.
So the plan identifies usually a current state or very clear what we want to improve with a ending sentence of desired current state.
So I'll kind of just kick it off. As we doing our rounding, do we have a checklist of things that we're looking at as we go through our rounding process? And if so, what are we doing using this information for and to drive our conclusions?
Yeah, so we use the ATG tool, and we've actually been going through that in our various committees to streamline the questions and not have so many, maybe combine some.
Okay. What are some examples of some of the frequent findings that you're finding as you performing the roundings?
Corridor clutter, stuff in the stairwells, power strips not being mounted correctly or improper ones being used.
Okay. And once you define this information, what are we doing with it? How do we use it?
Including the leaders in the rounding process, so I found that over time helps eliminate some of the findings going forward, because they don't like getting the emails showing findings in their units. So including them in the rounding process, that helps. Definitely in a smaller hospital. Sometimes I would imagine in a bigger hospital it might be a little more challenging, but it definitely helps, including these leaders and getting them involved in what these findings look like.
Okay. As I look, go ahead.
We've had some trouble here because of the turnover of leaders, and then teaching them the system, getting them the credentials to log in, keeping the list updated, because ATG doesn't automatically update our leader changes, so then you have to constantly go through it and maintain updates. PMC, because it was so large, me and David Arat would just have to log into all the tablets in ATG and just hand it to a leader, so it looked like we were finding everything, even though. So that's the hardest thing with the ATG tools, keeping all the information and data up to date with department leaders and stuff.
Okay. I just want to kind of put this on the radar as well. As we performing our roundings and things, I see a lot of us attend the EOC, the Environmental Council meeting sessions. There's a lot of the discussions that derive from your rounding come about and discuss to put closure on doing those sessions. I see a couple shaking heads in that area from that viewpoint. So is that kind of where we see some of the activity that Gary brings to the table or Dan brings to the table during those discussions, that processes and things are reviewed and signed off based on your roundings? Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll move right along.
Okay. So using a fishbone diagram to identify root causes of the corridor clutter. So just taking this, if somebody's got some ideas, but I mean, this is a basic fishbone diagram, and this is where you would identify some of the processes, the issues, the equipment, the staff, the team members. This is where you would identify a lot of any opportunities that you may have in order to improve the corridor clutter. So just taking like manpower and making staff shortages that lead, that the statement there, staff shortages leading to poor adherence to protocols. Maybe that is something. So you start plugging in little notes on how that could affect it and how it does affect it. What do you see in current state? Materials, PE staff is unsure of what considered clutter. I mean, is it clear? Is it a defined process? Do we understand what the life safety requirements are? Then machines, as far as that goes, the current checklist doesn't specifically ask them to look for corridor cutter. I mean, how do the team members out there know to do that? And so what is the effects of that? So creating a fishbone diagram to uncover any potential is kind of what this is all about.
You will do this during your group activities. So that's going to be part of your homework assignment for this class, is to go through a fishbone diagram. A template of a fishbone diagram is in the PowerPoint slides, so you can make a copy of the slide and edit the slide for your homework.
Okay. All right, so now we're at the implement the plan, and this is where plan engineering team will begin implementing standardized rounding checklists. We're educating our staff on using the checklist. And in conclusion, the team will also ensure the new frequencies and rounding structures are followed.
Okay. So is that you, Tyrone? Sorry.
I'll go ahead, Dave. Yeah. Monitoring the plan results. As we see here, the plan engineer will gather the data on the frequencies of corridor clutter issues that we touched on. The team will also track the process by comparing the frequencies of the clutter.
And then based on the results, make refinements. So in the act phase, this is where the data shows the frequency of corridor clutter issues has decreased. So this is where you go out and measure, you validate, you see what education opportunities, what's been successful. So in your act phase, in step 4 is where you do your validation.
Okay. We had another group discussion. And this one relates to how can the team ensure continuous improvement after the act phase? So feedback on how we can look at this.
I guess you would just kind of keep reviewing the process, just ongoing, make sure it's still efficient going through the steps.
Okay, so regular monitoring, that's correct, Steve.
Yeah.
What else? How about ensuring that the processes of things are consistently being followed, such as doing audits, things of that nature? Would that be something considered? What else? Well, if we're auditing, we definitely want feedback, don't we? We want to make sure that, everything is adhering to the way that we go about it.
If you're getting that feedback and it's not good feedback, making adjustments to the plan.
Good point. Good point. Anything else? Okay, so if I recap what we said here, we talked about monitoring the process. We want to validate, audit periodically, and then we're looking for feedback from that city, from those that are taking it on. Okay.
So what I'm going to do is put you in breakout groups, and you can take up to 30 minutes to, as a collective team, talk about what process you want to use for your group activity. So everyone has a handout for you to fill out. I will pull up which one I'm talking about. So just use this time before you take a lunch break to brainstorm what activities you want to use. So, and again, this is going to be something that you can have direct control over as much as possible, and something that you can make incremental improvement on. So this is the handout that I'm talking about that you're going to use for this. It says group activity PDSA scenario. We've gone through the example rounding scenario, so you have that. I will send you the other one that we talked about for the receptacles. Okay, so you'll have 2 different scenarios. And as a group, you will answer these questions. Who are the plan's authors? List them here. You don't need, I don't care about first name, last name, just who are the stakeholders that would be important for the success of process improvement. So the first thing is you'll decide what process improvement initiative you want to discuss for your group activity. So you'll describe that here. The group members or stakeholders that would be involved. SMART goals. So providing a brief description in the SMART goal format. How will you know if change has been made? What does success look like? What data or observations would you collect? What ideas do you have that could result in this improvement? So you'll just list out all, it's a brainstorming. And then you'll go through like a root analysis process. We'll do a study and act. All I'm asking you to do between now and the break is, as a group, come up with this first thing. And then when we come back after break, you'll have an opportunity to really put thought into laying out the rest of this handout, which you'll submit as your homework. But right now you're just brainstorming, okay, what process improvement initiatives do we want to focus on? Throw your different ideas out there. And then as a group, come up with one, and then you'll come back and fill out the rest. Does anyone have questions about that? Okay, I am going to put Tyrone and Dave in each group, and then Tyrone and Dave, if you want to come back to the main room and switch. And really your role is to facilitate the group discussion and be a sounding board for the different ideas, and then kind of swap and talk to the other group about what they're thinking of. So you're just there to facilitate and guide the discussion, but really everyone as a group participant will come up with ideas. I'm working on it. I know it's like, there we go. So you should have an invitation to join a breakout room. All you have to do is select that and go to your room.
Lindsay?
Hey, I'm gonna put you in a breakout room,
Okay.
but before I do that, I'm gonna catch you up.
Mhm.
You have an attachment from an email. I sent an email this morning. It's called Group Activity PDSA Scenario.
Okay.
Are you able to locate that?
Yep.
Okay, good. So all you're doing is in groups before we break for lunch is to generate process improvement initiative ideas and then converge on which one that you want to fill out with your group.
Okay.
And I again recommend doing that with one that you have greater control over. Do you recall who you've been in group activities with in the past?
Steve has been in my group. I don't think Brian has.
Steve and Brian?
Yeah, I don't think Brian has.
Oh.
I know I've been one with Steve.
Okay.
I'm not sure who. I'm trying to. Dusty was in one of my groups.
Okay.
So, sorry. Yeah, not still.
I'm going to put you in this first group.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. How is it going?
Good. We're getting through the problem statement.
Good. Did you want to switch over to the next group?
That yep, I was doing that just to see if that's what I needed to do.
Okay, yeah, I will.
Is Tyrone still in there?
He is, but you can kick him out or help him. Are they getting the gist of it?
Yeah, they were doing really good. So we were talking about the problem, and so the way where they kind of started was they started at so they wanted to use ATG because that's where they do some of their reporting. And
Mhm.
so how to improve ATG, the using ATG in order to get the problems addressed faster in order to increase the, they were trying to tie that last portion together of why they were trying to improve it. So, if it's tied to the health department, if it's tied to just rounding and data. So they were just trying to use ATG to improve something.
Got it. Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My speaker didn't work in there.
Oh, strange.
Yeah, it just kind of, I could see them, they could see me, but it just didn't work. So I can go back to the first room.
Okay.
All right, Lindsay, I'm gonna show you our statement and you tell me, pick it apart.
Seth's getting hungry.
What is the process that you're trying to improve?
So we need, during rounding, it takes a while to get the work orders and everything. So what our plan is to, while rounding, so I do it every other week, round with IP and EVS, and we have our findings. And what we want to do is, as we're rounding, the stuff that we see will create work orders for my team to come and fix it in a faster time to improve regulatory compliance.
So it's taking too long to,
It's taking too long to address the issues, correct?
so the speed at which you're able to discover the findings and document them is adequate, but the response time is slow.
Correct.
All right, yeah. So you need to focus your improvement measures on improving the response time. Great.
Yes,
Okay.
I think sometimes the ATG tool can be used to create the work orders, but oftentimes it's not because people will wait to go back to their office and do it. So there's that lead lag time.
So Brian, what you described is different than what I just heard from Seth, because what you just described is the time it takes to input and document the finding. And what I heard from Seth is the time it takes to resolve it.
Oh, I misspoke. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Seth,
Okay.
Seth said it correctly.
I think that was the Muda. I think that was the Muda. Muda was a couple of issues that might exist.
Yeah, there's several mudas that we're going to be reducing.
We're deep in Muda.
Great. I love it. I love it. Muda ninjas, enjoy your lunch. I will see
All right.
I'll see you
Great.
there.
See you in an hour.
Yep. I'm just staying on for the other group to come back.
It's amazing how many emails you can get in a couple hours.
It's amazing how much can go wrong in all of hours. For those of you that are still in this class, Gary, Dusty, and Casey, there is another Zoom link. Hopefully Casey finds that out. But if you can hear me, there's a separate Zoom link for part 2. I'm gonna go join this breakout room and see how they're doing.
Okay.
Okay, she's fixing to bring us back in. Hello, Lindsay.
No, I'm coming to y'all. How are we doing?
We're moving. We're moving.
Okay, yeah, looks like you've like blazed
Yeah.
ahead to the next section. So
Yeah.
that says in blue, streamline the PO process utilizing the PDSA method. So and this team is confident that this is something that they can influence or help control.
If our stakeholders listen to us, yes.
As long as Tyrone's involved with the whole process as well.
Fantastic. Great. Okay. So you all agree that the problem you're trying to solve is how long it takes to process POs?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, I hope you have a wonderful lunch break. And I will see you in an hour. There is a separate link for part 2. So don't hang out in this meeting. You'll be very lonely when you come back.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
So we're returning at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right.
All righty.